Hello, and welcome to another episode of Over Under Movies, the podcast in which we pick an overrated movie and an underrated movie in a similar vein, and we discuss them. I'm Ryan Oliver. I host a podcast called Unspooled Reel, and I'm the author of the blog Wellness in 24 Frames.
Hey, this is Oktay Kozak, film critic for the Oregon Herald, DVD Talk, Beyaz Perde, and The Playlist.
Hi, I'm Eric McClanahan, film critic for The Playlist, Oregon Arts Watch, and I have another film podcast called Adjust Your Tracking.
And our picks this week are by Mr. McClanahan himself, and we're going to do things a little bit different, a little bit looser. We're going to give you the titles right ahead instead of teasing the underrated pick, because we're going to be talking about two films from director James Cameron. This is our third director on director episode. We've already done a Danny Boyle and a Steven Spielberg one, and Eric's picked two films from James Cameron, the overrated being the highest grossing movie of all time, still,
right? Star Wars didn't take over.
By far.
Worldwide, still by far, Avatar, and then the 1989 director's cut of The Abyss. So I feel like that's about all the introduction we need, and I'll just pass it on to Eric, and let's get this discussion going.
Absolutely. I think I want to start with The Abyss because it's a movie that I think is... it's one that I've immediately thought of as a great underrated pick when I started doing this podcast. It was one when Oktay asked me to come on the show, however long ago, year plus ago, whatever, that was like, someday, The Abyss, for me, I have to do it. And it's specifically this quite longer director's cut, which clocks in at like 170 minutes, and the theatrical, it's about 28 or 29 more minutes of footage than the theatrical cut that came out in 1989. And according to IMDb, this director's cut came out in 1993, apparently. Like, it might have got a theatrical re-release. So just worth noting that. But
it came out on VHS, I know that much, because when I was going to film school, freshman film school, like 98, I got a bootleg VHS copy of the special edition.
Yeah, which I actually had that VHS before I got the DVD copy that I have. So yeah, I think you're right. But regardless, The Abyss to me is it's the great underrated James Cameron film. And when we're talking about James Cameron's directorial efforts, he's still like under 10 movies, I think. He doesn't make many movies, right? So there's not a lot to pick from, and a lot of his work is pretty well regarded. But The Abyss quite significantly underperformed the year it came out. It was always a movie that Cameron felt was compromised, hence why he made a longer version with all the stuff he wanted originally in it. But you really do see, I think, and it dawned on me today rewatching The Abyss, that it is a film that has essentially kind of affected the rest of his filmography since, because it's the first movie of his after Aliens, where Aliens was, very fetishistic of the military. The military guys were the heroes in that movie. And I think I don't want to put you both on blast, but it's fair to say we all love Aliens on this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a fucking masterpiece, probably. An action, it's a brilliant film. It's one of his best. But this is the first movie with The Abyss where he turns on his perspective of the military. And I think that's something worth diving into at some point in this episode, because the military is a significant theme in all of his work, not least of which the overrated pick, Avatar. And it carries on to even through Avatar. You get the sort of alien bioluminescent coloring, the sort of environment, the look of The Abyss carries into Avatar. You also have the sort of shooting in water and difficult conditions, literal shots of hallways flooding with water that carries into something like how he was able to make Titanic, about 7-8 years later. It was like The Abyss was sort of, in a way, like a practice run movie for Cameron for the rest of his career as we see him right now, as he's, lost in New Zealand, making 3 or 4 more Avatar movies.
We should say the second one is focusing on the oceans of Pandora. So if you want to go further into the water and that element, diving into his career.
That is true.
No pun intended, but yes.
And I'm glad you said that, Ryan, because that element of the Avatar sequel is one of the most only thing that's really got me interested in it is he really wants to explore a realm that he does quite well cinematically. He portrays quite well, and that's the water. But also the idea of him going into other realms of that world is the only thing that sounds of interest for me. And we can get into that as we talk about our feelings of Avatar.
Exactly.
The
that
first
he's
film.
made great sequels also.
Exactly. There you go. That's the other thing that gets me excited. But when, and I can hand it off to you guys to see what you think, but really for me, The Abyss is a big one. Like, I grew up with it as a movie. It was big for like me and my brother. Like, it's a nostalgic movie for me. And I'm even talking when I first saw it as the theatrical cut that was only available at one point. But then when I came across this director's cut, I'll say this. It's hokier. It's much cheesier than it even was before. There's like
added exposition is clearer, like the motivations of the
aliens,
extra, not the extraterrestrial, interterrestrial beings or whatever they call them.
They call
Underterrestrial,
underwater terrestrial. Underwater flying object. He calls them. Yeah.
So their motivations become clearer, which I think a lot of the times, film buffs and people, like us who like more like a subtler approach to messages like that in science fiction might have gravitated a little more towards a theatrical version of like, oh, it's all like kind of left in the viewer's imagination about what they were doing, but at the same time, he cut out so much, and like you said, it was compromised as well. That the theatrical version turns into a movie where you can completely take out the creatures, the aliens, and it would still be like an excellent thriller. Excellent underwater thriller.
And that would be a shame, though. Yeah. Wouldn't that be a shame, though? Because I understand, but I'm just coming from like a complete, like, straight up story screenwriting perspective. That stuff looks beautiful, and it's all that, it's great. But at the end of it, like, because I remember watching it when it I think the first time I watched it was on TV, like I want to say like the early 90s. They showed the theatrical version, and this was like a year or two after Terminator 2 came out, which made a huge splash in terms of like using CGI and all that stuff. And it was I watched The Abyss around the time Jurassic World was coming out, so there was like CGI and like this new technology was always in my head as like this like impressionable 13-year-old who's into like, when you're a movie fan at 13, you're into more of the shiny stuff than the more subtle stuff. Yeah, exactly.
So you're like, ooh, shiny. Like,
and The Abyss has a lot of
looks
that.
Cool. And then, so I knew about The Abyss in terms of like, James Cameron's movie between Aliens and Terminator 2, which I love all of those. And I heard that it was like the one that he basically, like you said, it was just like a trial run for CGI as well before he broke new ground with Terminator 2. So I was really interested mainly because of that one sequence where the aliens who control the water, basically like this surrogate thing comes out of the water and like, that CGI effect, which still looks great to this day, I gotta say.
I agree.
Cameron is one of those directors where he just like, he knows exactly how to use whatever the limitations of like a technology that's given to him. So he probably looked at like CGI technology in the late 80s and he was like this technology does water really well. So let me use it with water instead of like trying to make it like, CGI like human forms or, other organic stuff like that. So it's like he picked the right thing to use for that sequence. So just like that blew my mind when I first watched it when I was like 13 or 14. But yeah, definitely, like there was a part of me before, like I didn't even know there was a special edition out or the extended cut or whatever, but I could still tell. I was just like, this feels like it's great. It's a thrilling movie. It's exciting from beginning to end. It's greatly paced. But then at the same time, you're like, what was the motivation of the creatures? What did they want to do? And it's a little bit here and there could have helped a little bit more, but keeping it so vague, I felt like it turned it into a situation where you could maybe take out like all the not all the alien stuff, but like just I didn't feel like it really affected it that much, and I feel like that's what as obvious as the special edition makes it, which I don't know why. He has this weird thing about like not calling his director's cuts like director's cuts. He always calls them special editions.
How weird. I didn't know that.
It's like, the official, even though he basically says like this is my version of the film, right. the official name of the Abyss quote unquote director's cut is still called the special edition.
Right.
I didn't even know about that, but then even then I was like, I feel like there's more. And what I really like about the special edition is like, yes, it makes that whole environmentalist message that, you know, like you said, Eric, it's just like, you know, that came back in Avatar, so as later films have the same messages that made that message clearer, made it clearer as to why they didn't go through with it, and also just on a visual scale, that whole the effect that ILM did of the giant wave stopping right before it hits the ground is beautiful. It's just like this really eerie, gorgeous visual that I'm glad that like made it back into the film.
Could you imagine all the people working on that effect for it to be cut? It's cut, and at that time to create that, like, and then the odd thing is that, well, maybe it's not odd because this director's cut did come out of it, or the special edition, but how influential that effect has been in how many like disaster movies that have come out have the giant wave effect. I mean, that goes back to The Abyss. Like, that's kind of cool.
Emmerich wouldn't have a career without that scene.
Exactly. Ryan, I'd love to know what you think of The Abyss, man. What do you think?
I really like this movie. Number one, looking at the last shot in the movie, I had a thought, too. I'm like, has Cameron seen The Quiet Earth? Because that last, like, scene, like, really reminded me of that. But, no, I really like this movie. I actually think the aliens' motivations are actually quite clear, actually, especially with the sort of like Cold War tensions that are bubbling throughout in the background of this.
A lot of that is cut from the theatrical version, though.
Yeah, right, which I've actually never seen. I've only seen the director's cut.
Oh, okay, so you mean I meant the aliens' motivations in the theatrical cut wasn't really clear.
Oh, got it.
In the special edition, it's really clear.
Yeah, it's completely clear. And for me, I think, like Octa even said, without the alien stuff, this movie, Eric's right, it would be a shame without it, but I do think the movie is even effective as just this, like, underwater paranoia thriller, especially, like, for me on a personal level, because, like, I can swim, and, like, I like swimming in, like, a lake or swimming in a swimming pool. I don't mind that, like, leisurely, but I hate being underwater. Like, I hate the feeling of being underwater. So, like, this movie is just, like, gives me a panic attack from, like, for everything, from beginning to end. And so, like, to me, it's almost a great horror movie in that way for me, because it's that, like, claustrophobic feeling.
Especially that amazing scene with Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth, and where the water's slowly filling up, and they're like negotiating over basically which one of them gets to live.
Who gets to drown.
I also think outside the first Terminator, this might be his best screenplay. I would argue. Because we I think, and we'll definitely get into this with Avatar, but I think we can all acknowledge, as much as we're all pretty big fans of James Cameron, we acknowledge he's not the greatest screenwriter in the world. Like but nobody's ever going to tell him no, so he's always going to write his movies. But like this movie, I feel, obviously the aliens' motivations are clear, and things don't have to be clear for it to be good necessarily, but like I feel like the characters, like everybody has, and Aliens is that way too, but every single person has their motivations for what they're doing. Every single person has these traits to them that makes them, even the smallest characters, just like three-dimensional.
I agree. Like the crew members, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like I have favorite characters in this movie, and it's not like not like Aliens where they're all badasses. These are like the crew of the Nostromo from Aliens.
They're not written interchangeably. They're
blue collar people, right? But like Catfish, the guy who's like the tough guy, lovable tough guy of the group, who always is the first to. By the way, that actor has like the greatest slow-mo punch scene in this movie.
It's awesome
when he punches Michael Biehn and it just goes, "Hey," and it cuts to him.
Yeah.
I love that moment. I get chills.
Well, the way that scene is edited and pasted and written, it's incredible. Also, it does a lot for that as well.
Yeah, when the Abyss kicks into like thriller mode or action mode, holy shit, it's just a reminder that James Cameron can make something thrilling out of slow scuba the tanks that they drive underwater, the like floating tank things, like those aren't going very fast, but it's thrilling when they're like chasing each other. The way he cuts it together. And I think Alan Silvestri's score like has a few kind of weak, maudlin moments, but by and large is like really kind of perfect for this movie.
Very dynamic.
Yeah, it changes. You're right. It's very dynamic. The ranges it goes through. It has horror-like moments occasionally, but then it does get into this, like, grand, like, very cheesy. Like, the thing I like about this movie and especially the special edition is that it's James Cameron is an earnest filmmaker usually, but this is his most earnest movie, I feel like. Like, he can't be this way anymore because he's an older guy, I feel like, now. And that's where the lessons he learned making The Abyss, and I think the struggles and the fact that it ultimately wasn't a huge hit for him, unlike basically everything else he made. I think it really was a huge... It stuck with him in a way, and he learned a lot of lessons, but yet I don't think... And Ryan, you made me realize this as you pointed out the script of this movie. I think it changed the way he wrote his scripts from then on, because... You look at the first Terminator, I'll put the first, and Aliens, and then The Abyss. The script work, he's never been as good with his characters. Like, he's never been... T2 has a pretty solid script, but you know what I mean? Like, he starts to waver a little bit. He becomes a little more, like... He starts to rely on kind of cheesy lines in his...
He prioritizes... Like True Lies especially. Yeah. Look at, it's like, where's your invitation? Here's my invitation. Like, stuff like that. And Avatar will definitely get into some of those very cheesy lines. But this was his... this was definitely the biggest budgeted movie he had done up until this point in his career. And it was the first, it was his passion project, like his sort of, reward, or maybe, the process wasn't, but at least getting greenlit. It's like for Terminator doing so well and Aliens doing so well that he got to make this movie that he wanted, but it was compromised, as you said, at every single turn in production.
Yeah, it's go ahead, Octa.
Oh, sorry. It's damn it, I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, Eric, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that The Abyss to me is it's one of those movies like, okay, so there's a lot of everything is sort of the grandchildren of 2001: A Space Odyssey, since that movie came out, a lot of...
Especially considering James Cameron's huge obsessed for that movie,
right? And obsessed with exactly. He loves that movie. And every director that's reached a certain level of power, like James Cameron and other directors who they all have kind of wanted to make their version of 2001. And nothing stands even on the same level of that film. Obviously, it's one of the greats of all time. But I do like The Grandchildren of 2001. And I'm thinking of The Abyss is the one for James Cameron. I think of Close Encounters of the Third Kind for Spielberg.
Yeah. But at least
Interstellar,
exactly.
And then honestly, Contact for Robert Zemeckis.
And every single science fiction film ever made by Ridley Scott.
Right.
Maybe even non-science fiction films. You can see influences of 2001 on shit that doesn't have any science fiction in it.
I'm not saying anything new to say how the influence of this 2001, but I'm specifically these big directors that they want to make their 2001, not just that, 2001 affected the entire movie industry, the way effects were changed, but I'm talking just making their kind of it's got trippy elements, great effects, they've all kind of done that, and I like those kind of movies. I think The Abyss is one of the most original of those because its aliens
in the water.
They're in the water. Yeah, it's an original avenue to go down.
So he goes down instead of up.
He goes down. Cameron goes down.
Cameron goes down.
He goes down hard.
I don't know if I want to see that, actually.
No, I would not want to see that.
It's ironic that we say that because the dude, everything, it's the opposite of that in his career. He makes every movie is more successful than the last, and everything since The Abyss is bigger budgeted. Each movie he makes since The Abyss seems like it was then the biggest budget movie.
They're more and more populist though in approach. That's why what we're talking about with screenplay. I just remembered what I was going to say, by the way. That after The Abyss, he started putting plot and set pieces before character. Mm-hmm. He wasn't like one of those soulless blockbuster Michael Bay types where it's just didn't even go into character or didn't even go into any kind of a story structure. He was really he has a certain base level of quality that he just doesn't compromise for sure. But you can tell that like starting with Terminator 2, which has a bit more like character stuff in it, and then moving on to True Lies, which is kind of a farce semi-parody, and then Titanic, which is like on the basis level of like the very straightforward romance mixed with like the disaster movie, and just basically puts together all the tropes of that and does it in a way that's just like totally perfectly fine, but nothing special as far as like the story and the screenplay.
That last hour of Titanic though is great.
It's great, but that's more the director and directing and the pacing to me than about like as far as writing is concerned. I don't see anything that was like written so well.
There's a reason the Titanic script didn't get for all the Oscars that Titanic won and was nominated for. It never got a nomination.
And that was appropriate. And the thing that I like about The Abyss is that maybe it's the last time where he prioritized character over plot.
Yeah.
It like you said, like all these like the grunts in an Alien ripoff. More 95% of the time they're all interchangeable. They're like, they just get picked off one by one. Even in Alien, where you can like tell them apart, like there are a couple of them where you're just like, maybe Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton are a little bit interchangeable.
Oh, I like them in that movie, but I hear you.
But this one is just like every single character is so distinct. There's more attention given to them, and the whole theme of the story about like these alien creatures, will they or won't they have any faith in humanity at the end, goes hand in hand with the fact that he prioritizes characters and the relationship between the characters over the plot, because it's all about how they relate to each other, how they like get through this insanely stressful, like frightening situation by working together, and the aliens see all of that stuff. So it ties into the plot as well. It's not just like, I'm just going to write a character-oriented like action movie because I'm like artsy-fartsy or whatever, which is like as far away from James Cameron as you can get anyway.
Right.
But that's what I really like about The Abyss. It's just like, that's why it's so endearing to me, and that's why like, you're right, it is underrated in that sense, especially the special edition that goes into all these like kind of elements about, should you have faith in humanity, should you not have faith, like, and these are kind of like themes that James Cameron has always kind of grappled with. Like you mentioned, Eric, with like the stuff that he made after, there's a lot of like, showing like the worst sides of humanity intersected with the best parts of humanity, but the people who usually represent like the better parts of humanity are in the minority.
Right.
And with every new film, it feels like they get like that minority becomes smaller and smaller. like in Avatar, for example, it's just like the entire world, and there's like two people, two humans who are like, wait, this is fucked up. Maybe we should help the the indigenous aliens or whatever. Versus like 10 billion people who are like, we need all this stuff. But yeah, there's that kind of like dichotomy that I really enjoy. I kind of want to get into maybe down the line. I want to hear your thoughts about all this stuff first, but I kind of want to get into the idea that like I think this is a better written and a better executed love story than Titanic. Even though Titanic is the be-all and end-all, like everybody's like big romance or whatever, but
that movie fetishizes the romance. Like this movie has like a like true, honest to God romance at the center of it, especially because it's like there's hardship that goes into the relationship as well as the good stuff, and like
there's
they have to go through all this shit.
The characters have better dimension.
We're introduced to them with a past. It's not like Jack and Rose or Jake and Natiri who just like met. You know what I mean?
And
it's like they've had this past.
Also, the performances are better.
Ed Harris is fantastic, and so is Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. I cannot pronounce her last name to save my life. I apologize.
Tony Montana's sister. Just call her that from now on.
Oh gosh, who I loved as a kid, because one of my favorite movies as a kid, I'm not going to say now, was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Nice, Marion.
Yeah, that movie doesn't hold up, for the record, but
No, it
That's going to
doesn't.
be a hold up on my podcast for me someday. Maybe I'll be disappointed. It sounds like.
No,
We'll
it
find out.
doesn't hold. I was never a huge fan when I was like 10, I think, or 11 when it first came out. While Ryan was still in diapers, but
true.
it's actually true. That wasn't. I was kind of setting that up to be like a joke, but then I'm just like, that's actually true. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, but Ryan, you're right, man. She's great. Like Mary Elizabeth.
Yeah, she's great in everything that she's been in.
She fits that one trope, like not trope necessarily, but something that's also been consistent in Cameron's career that I have to applaud him for: is strong female protagonists. Like she comes with this immediately. She's like so tough that even people like she walks onto the that ship at the beginning, and Chris Elliott's like, "Oh, here's the queen bitch of the world." Like, just because she's so headstrong that like these, maybe meeker men don't even know what to do or how to handle that.
And also, she's not a strong female character the way that we think of strong female characters now, where it's like, oh, she kicks ass, so she's a strong female character.
Yeah,
she has muscle.
Ripley.
It's always like external, but with her, she actually is written and performed as a strong female character.
Mm-hmm. I had texted Eric watching this movie last night, or after watching this movie, and I was like, you know what movie almost would have been a good overrated to go with this was Armageddon, like the sort of like blue collar, the blue collar heroes, the
oil rig guys.
Oil rig guys.
Yeah, does anyone really love Armageddon anymore? Like
people, I know people who love that movie, and
why are you still friends with them?
Well, because some of them are family members, so
okay.
I can't necessarily disown them, but. But like the blue collarness, and also like when Chris Elliott says that line, it reminded me also of like I think it's the like old guy at the beginning of Armageddon with the telescope who like calls into NASA and he's like, "Can we name the asteroid after my wife because she's the biggest bitch in the world?" But like it comes off so like ugly because that's just base style. But it's like this one,
it's not a base misogyny.
But this movie has like that absolute amount of tension because you care about these characters, you care about their struggle, and I think it's great. I lost my train of thought there for a second.
It's an ambitious movie. Like he's going for a lot, and that's why I think the movie actually is even paced better when it's longer because he is working with a lot of ideas and things he's going for. Like there's the whole, like Octay said, in one version you could almost remove the aliens and it would be a whole movie unto its own. And there's not where Octay, I also agree. Octay is like. James Cameron isn't some artsy-fartsy director, but there aren't many directors that work on movies of this scale that would have a script that is this narratively kind of freeform, because there are massive inciting incidents that happen that are like only at like hour 2 in this movie, and you're like, oh shit, there's still 50 minutes of like an alien encounter that has to happen. And Ed Harris has to dive down the trench to go find the bomb. Like
it's like a movie with 5 acts.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because the traditional third act climax of beating the bad guy happens, and then there's still an hour to go.
There's still an hour, exactly. The movie's not done yet, and yet it doesn't feel to me anticlimactic, and it does with that shorter theatrical cut because things kind of are like, we gotta rush, and just it's over, and suddenly they're floating up, and he's making out with Mary Elizabeth at the end of the movie, and it's like, what just happened? Where when the movie has time to breathe, when it a lot of the good little character bits are cut out in the theatrical version, and it makes sense because that's the way a producer or a studio would look at a movie of like, we don't need them singing all together a country song as they work, That's the stuff that's actually cut out, and it's little snips like that here and there where scenes all breathe quite a lot longer in this special edition, and it's kind of like James Cameron doing what PTA did with something like Magnolia. Like, nope, this is my thing that I want to do. It has to breathe this long. It has to have this many character moments because he's working with a lot, but yet with the sort of quasi like 5-act structure, as you said, Octay, that the movie has. This like not common, it's pretty different script structure for this kind of movie. It really works. He pulls it off, and I think that's. The big reason I think this is real quick, just the big reason this is a bit like an underrated for me, it was such an automatic pick for me at some point, is that nobody really talks about this movie from James Cameron because stuff like Avatar and Titanic they're the movies that it's the reason he is famous now, like super famous. But The Abyss is to me like one of those that people should go back and watch, I feel like. But anyway,
if they can get a good quality version.
Copy, I was going to say that too.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that, guys, because I got to ask, the DVD that I have, it's the special edition. It's almost no frills. There's both the theatrical and the special edition on here. Mine it filled up my whole screen as a scope aspect.
Yeah, it'll do that.
But you had to fill it, right? Is that the problem?
It's a new like DVD players that came out like I want to say like the last decade or so. They have that feature where if it's a non-anamorphic transfer,
right?
Because it used to be that you put it in a 4x3 regular old TV.
It'd be letterbox.
It was letterbox. Like it was the scope, the 2:35:1 aspect ratio was completely letterbox. It was not anamorphic, and that creates when you watch it on a widescreen TV, especially when you upconvert it. If it's an anamorphic transfer, that makes it look so much better.
So much.
Because there's less information on the top and bottom of the screen, so you can use like more bit rate. It was anyway. Our friend Drew, like the AV nerd, can like go into like 10 hours of details over this.
It looks better, basically.
It looks better. There
should be a freaking Blu-ray of this movie out.
Oh, there should be at least.
And even I gotta say, a bigger hit than this movie. There's still no True Lies on Blu-ray either.
Yeah. And True Lies is a non-anamorphic DVD as well.
Both those DVDs suck.
Strange Days as well. I love Strange Days. Strange Days doesn't have a Blu-ray, and the DVD looks like garbage. When you put it on, and like a lot of these like James Cameron stuff, like I don't know what's holding it behind, but it's like
Avatar sequels.
I guess but we don't even have like an anamorphic DVD. Like I would be at least because when you what happens is that so your DVD player automatically blows it up, and you get the kind of illusion. If you didn't know a lot, if you were a guy who didn't know a lot about like this stuff, you would be like, oh, it's just like any other DVD. It's just up converting. But in the back of your mind, you'd be like, this kind of looks terrible. Like,
right.
There's something odd here. And what's going on is that your DVD player is automatically not using the anamorphic signal. Your DVD player is just automatically zooming in on this letterbox picture.
Right.
And so what you're getting is like, basically a 50% at least, like, decrease in picture quality.
Right.
And I watched it like that today on like I watched it a little bit on the projector downstairs, which is like a 120-inch screen, and it looked like, a bunch of like pixels, like giant pixels fucking. Like that's what it looked like.
It wasn't too bad. I played it off a Blu-ray player.
Orgy.
I have like a 38-inch flat screen, and I played it through my Blu-ray player, and it just looked like a DVD through a Blu-ray player. It wasn't too bad, but I bet Octave, with you blowing it up that much, that makes sense.
And I watched it on 55-inch TV, and it's just like it's so hard to get. I mean, if it was a movie that was like. Maybe like an indie, nothing.
Right.
Like a Woody Allen movie, I'd be like, fine, whatever. But it's The Abyss, man. Like, how the fact that this movie doesn't have like, so it's like such a weird place that we're at, where I'm like, go find the special edition of The Abyss, go watch it, but maybe wait for a Blu-ray to come out.
Right.
My disc lied to me. Like it said it was anamorphic widescreen, and I put it in and. Okay, so the two worst things that could happen at the beginning of the movie happened. Number one, the THX deep note, of course, and then after that, it said the one thing that I hate to see: this film has been modified to fit your TV, and I was like, no fucking way! And then it starts
full
like,
screen?
it was full screen, and I was like, the box said it was widescreen. Why is it full screen? And
mine says that, but mine is 235. Like mine didn't say that.
No. Mine was 4:3. Mine was.
That's
damn it! Was it pan and scan?
I don't know what it was, but I was so frustrated because I've had this, like I forgot. I guess it had been so long since I watched it.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh yeah, own it, and then
all I know from AV nerds is that there's like 8 different DVD releases of The Abyss, and they all look like shit.
Right.
Like, there isn't a single one where people are like, you should buy this one.
I dug deep because I wanted to know on the internet.
And there isn't an HD, like, digital VOD copy available to rent or anything either.
That's
no,
a shame.
It's not there. It's not
the strangest thing is how hands-on Cameron is as like a technician and how much he cares about that. And I wonder if it's because he's so knee-deep in Avatar sequels that like he isn't able to be present during a restoration, and that's the only way he would let his film. I don't know, but that's the only thing I can think of. It's bizarre, though. It's really,
but I gotta say, I was digging deep, and I was looking at forums because I'm like, is it coming? Are we going to get one? And apparently, somebody had posted, and you never know if this is true or not, but there was apparently down in LA 2 years ago, there was a 30th anniversary screening of The Terminator that Cameron was present with, and this person either wrote for a site or knew somebody who was writing for a site who got to like interview James Cameron or got to ask him a question, and he said something to the effect of, he's like, when are we going to get a copy of The Abyss on Blu-ray? And Cameron just points over into the crowd, and apparently it was just like a couple of executives at Fox, and it was just like those are the holdup. So I guess so apparently, again, who knows how true that is, but it might be on their end that they're
maybe they don't think it's worth it or something.
Maybe maybe they'll wait, because who knows? Maybe they'll wait for the next, I guess, big anniversary, which would be the 30 year in 3 years, or maybe whenever Avatar 2 comes out, release.
There's at least a serviceable HD master that exists, because that's what they show when they show HBO or whatever, like on HD channels. That's the HD master they show, but they only have it for the theatrical version. I don't think there's an HD version of the special edition that exists, which is the real shame, because that's the version that I also agree that people should watch. But even those, those are only available like on torrents and stuff like that someone basically just DVR'd from. When it was on Showtime or whatever, so it's very. Otherwise, you're stuck with those shitty DVDs.
What a shame,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Ryan. Go.
I was just saying, while this movie is underrated, definitely in Cameron's body of work, we should also mention, though, with the director's cut, this movie has been considered pretty positively critically, I think, in the years since. Maybe not necessarily on its release, but it has been critically well regarded in the years since.
That is true. I think that's worth bringing up, and it's for me to stress the point on why it's underrated is just I just don't feel that much. Of all the Cameron movies that people, if there's something like video essays or people write about him, I rarely feel like The Abyss comes up. They'll go to the original Terminator or Aliens before that, or T2,
because it's a really rich film too, with a lot of themes.
And so I really just, it's sort of just one of those feelings I have. It's just like, why don't people talk about The Abyss? I can't necessarily prove it. It's just something I feel a little bit. Whereas with the overrated pick, I think with Avatar you can kind of say the same thing. Although that's kind of been a running joke on a podcast I'm a fan of, the /Filmcast. Is lately they've had this running gag between hosts of nobody Avatar is no longer people care about it no more, even though it's the most.
There's a lot of think pieces written about that there's the biggest box office sensation ever and had almost zero influence on pop culture.
Right, people don't talk about it seems like. And, other people throw out things like, you never see anyone dressing up like Avatar characters for Halloween, and there are these almost kind of arbitrary things from our own experiences that make us think, nobody really cares about Avatar. But I do think a lot of us collectively are feeling that, James Cameron is, tripling down. He's making Avatar 2, 3, and 4, I think, concurrently, basically all at once.
And he keeps pushing it back, so
he keeps well, that's nothing new for him. He takes his time. Course. That's the thing, But it's going to be obviously a huge, expensive thing. Is it a gamble? Probably not, because the first one was so popular. But that Avatar is still, even after Episode 7, Star Wars, still the most globally highest-grossing movie by $600 million. Still, I think, still quite a margin, and it still will be when Star Wars is done. Is that movie had that 3D it was the movie that ushered in the new 3D that we still kind of see now. I mean, a lot of movies still are released like that, but has already kind of wavered. And I think that gets at some of what's been lost with the movie, is that the 3D effect was sort of fleeting. You know, by the time we had Alice in Wonderland and then all the other movies that sort of retrofitted it to get those 3D dollars, and they kind of picked off the carcass of Avatar like that, it sort of became tired. Where there, of course, have been great examples of 3D used, but I can count them on like less than 10 fingers.
The thing about the really fast rise and fall of the 3D thing right after Avatar is that 3D as a technology and just purely visually is not a very objective matter. If you make a shitty 3D movie, shitty looking 3D movie, people are going to notice it and people are going to get sour. And what happened was that the market was flooded with 3D movies, especially right after Avatar. And the biggest mistake that I think the studios made was like right after Avatar, I feel like the entirety of 2010 was filled with big budget movies that were post-converted.
Yeah.
You know, that weren't shot for 3D, weren't edited for 3D, weren't anything. And wasn't there was news about like how like Clash of the Titans, they had 2 weeks to convert it into 3D or something like that.
Yeah, they did the same thing with The Last Airbender too.
The Last Airbender, and like there were like all these movies that looked like garbage because, you know, here you have a movie that was shot for this format where, you know, Cameron spent like a decade perfecting the technology and the way that it's you know, it's shot like there's a specific way that you basically need to edit 3D. Like you can't you know, like I remember, for example, recently something like World War Z, which I think had like a post conversion, and they might have the studio might have like decided on 3D at the last minute because you can't have like a quick cut like handheld shaky cam 3D movie. Because your brain has to like, there's all this like scientific stuff about like your brain has to adjust the image, and you know if you watch Avatar, it's just like the way it's more languidly paced for you to like soak up all the images in 3D, and I think it still kind of works in 2D, but that was like the big thing.
Well, Cameron was such a proponent for like people should be doing this native 3D. He did always speak out about that. That was important, but you know, of course, like you're pointing out, Octane, most of Hollywood did not care nor pay attention.
But anymore, it almost feels like that fad has gone away so fast, and that it has, but we are left with pure native 3D that we get now. Like I almost feel like because Cameron perfected it and Cameron used it to push the form, that we got movies like Gravity and The Walk and Life of Pi, like these just immersive 3D. I'd even argue Prometheus in 3D was pretty stunning. For as dumb as that movie is, it like
that was the best thing about it.
Hugo and Life of Pi as well.
I mentioned Life of Pi. Like these.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Mad Max Fury Road, even though I think that might have been
that was post conversion.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
But either way, like these Avatar was able to push that form and use 3D not just as this gimmick, not just as a hey, let's throw shit at the screen at people, but it used it to like actually immerse you in an experience, and it immersed you into this other world. And I think because of that movie, we got movies like Gravity and things of that sort. And you know, it's like that line at the end of Moneyball when Billy Bean gets offered to go manage the Red Sox, and the manager's telling him, you know, the first one through the wall always gets the bloodiest, and that's sort of the way Avatar is seen. I feel it's the one that people kind of can point and laugh at, sure, but I think we've gotten even better movies because of it, and because it was a trailblazer.
It was 6 years ago, but I still remember like. You know, that it was an event. Like I still remember how it looked and how it felt watching it in 3D. A lot of movies that I watch in 3D, I just completely forget they're in 3D because they do. You know, you go to press screenings and everything. If it's in 3D, they're going to show it in 3D most of the time. Yeah. And a lot of them, I'm just like, it's just in the back of my mind. I'm just like, oh, was that in 3D really? But I remember like Avatar. Like the whole thing about it was that I think that's part of the reason why it was such a juggernaut. Like. Box office wise is because it was like an event. Like you went to the IMAX, and I remember going with friends and being like enthralled into the experience of the way it looked, and that has so much more to do with James Cameron's, like, you know, him being a stickler for excellence and getting this like visually perfectly right, than it was for just like, it was just a jackpot. It was just like, I just made a 3D movie and people were ready for it, I guess. It was specifically that movie and the way that it was presented in 3D that made it a big deal.
It's funny, Eric.
Go ahead.
It's funny you mentioned the Slash Filmcast gag that's been going on. I actually tweeted at them. I was working on a show and I was building camera rigs in a cruise hotel room, and I was waiting in the lobby, and the "I See You" by Leona Lewis played in the lobby, and I tweeted at them. I was like, "Well, I just heard this in a lobby. Is that culturally relevant?" And
nice.
They actually all liked it, which I thought was pretty fun.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, and that gag on the Slash Filmcast, it's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, like I haven't really thought about Avatar. Me personally, it sort of was something I agreed with, but also, I guess the main thing I want to get across with Avatar, I don't think it's a bad movie. Ryan, I'm really glad the way you laid it out and what you've just said about the film, because it is a trailblazer, and that's why James Cameron is still like the man. Like, everybody shits on James Cameron as he's making a movie. I'm kind of did it a little bit already with these Avatar sequels, but nobody should ever bet against James Cameron. No. And we have so much like, he invented technology with his crew and people that made Avatar and pushed the form further, so we could get stuff like Gravity, which is like the best 3D movie I've ever seen, and stuff like Hugo and Life of Pi, which were amazing. And because of him, that's great. But as a movie, though, like, honestly, and it's the reason I connect it so specifically with The Abyss, actually, is all the things about the Abyss that work for me, even though it's cheesy as hell, just like Avatar's cheesy as hell, is The Abyss is just not as like straight. It's so much. It's actually far more nuanced in its like anti-military message. It's the way we talked about the script being constructed, and that might be the big factor. Is James Cameron, the scriptwriter, the change he's had, the change in him as a scriptwriter from The Abyss to Avatar is the biggest change, really, because as a filmmaker, as a visual, like pushing technology further, but as a visual like storyteller, he's only gotten like more accomplished. Yet his movies, these last few, these wildly, massively popular, Oscar-nominated, Oscar-winning, are like far less. I don't think they resonate and stay as much. Titanic will always be a big famous movie, as will Avatar in some respect. But to me, and this is more so just a personal thing, but I think there's a lot of people who agree, is like nothing can top like that first 4 films, not including Piranha 2, is Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, specifically the special edition, and T2. Like, that's what makes him a great filmmaker to me. And though I'm happy that he continues to prove people wrong, that he's pushing things forward, that he gets to do what he wants to do, but I miss the old James Cameron. And I don't see the old James Cameron in Avatar. I see a far less, a more hammy storyteller. A guy that...
If he wasn't so hammy and obvious and populist in the way that he drew like incredibly narrow representations of like the good guys and the bad guys, the military and the indigenous people, do you think it would have made nearly as much money?
Probably not. I mean, I think that's the thing, is he essentially put forth a massive hippie. He put forth a really hippie message of like, hey man, like military, like that's kind of what I was alluding to in the beginning, is that The Abyss was the time where James Cameron went from being a sort of tough guy filmmaker, and he still made tough guy movies after, but he became a hippie. He kind of suddenly, and I think that was what was always struggling to come out of him, because that's why The Abyss was a passion project for him. Is it was as if that movie is earnest and works as it's like overly 3-hour long earnest story, because it's him saying like, this is really me, and that carries into Avatar. It's just so much more hammy, like the military, the way Giovanni Ribisi, just like everything with him, the corporate greed and military violence. Right. And again, who's the I'm blanking on the actor's name. Billy Lang, is it, that plays
Stephen Lang?
Yeah. Stephen Lang. That guy is the best part of Avatar for me, because he knows what kind of movie he's in, and he's a great actor, because he can do the comic book hamminess.
He's horrible. His dialogue is terrible.
Yeah, they'll kill you and eat your ass like jujubes.
Exactly.
He knows he's taking a piss out of it, and it is as annoying as that character is, it's annoying because he's so horribly written. But the guy's performance makes it at least entertaining.
Exactly. But yes, you're right, Octave. As a character, he's like, compare him
to a cartoon.
Compare him to the Michael Biehn character in The Abyss, and it's like, wow, look at the difference of script writing for a very similar character that represents very similar things. He does the orders from the guy on high, and both movies kind of show you that, like, the steps made by the military are like, it's step by step. It's like, it's all their fault what happens. It's very clear, right? The Abyss, if the fucking military dudes didn't leave with their ship to go get the warhead because they were given orders to do, Michael Biehn's like, I was under orders, but it's like he had a choice. And I like that James Cameron got that message through much more successfully, plus with everything else in The Abyss, than he did with Avatar, because, like, it's just more nuanced. But like, it's all the military's fault, and I love the way it's laid out. Like, The Abyss is really like a hippie statement of a movie, and I kind of love that.
Not all the military characters are just like this monolithic, like, violent,
in The Abyss,
insane people. And, some of them are like, some of them question Bean's, sanity, and they're a little bit, like, unsure about what the hell's going on, but then they still have to follow orders. And even the way that Bean is written, and he has an arc. Like, the military dude in Avatar doesn't have an arc. None of the bad guys have any kind of arc. They're just like, the corporate guy is greedy and the military guy is violent, and that's about it. But, he definitely has an arc, and you get to a point where just like, he makes for an interesting antagonist, because there is a part of you that still kind of thinks like, maybe I would have lost my mind too in that situation. Like, there's a lot more that you can sympathize with. Well,
because it's like
that's what makes an interesting antagonist.
Right, they lay it out so well in the beginning of The Abyss, whereas another comparison to Avatar, it's Stephen Lang gives you all this really straightforward, lame exposition in the beginning. And he's like, let me tell you about Pandora. And he gives this whole thing, right, where he lays out the movie. And that's a much more ham-fisted James Cameron screenwriter. Whereas in The Abyss, it's like seeded in the whole idea of, what do they call it? Pressure sickness. Like, it's brought up. Michael Biehn is really touchy about it, and it's like we see that he actually has a thing. We can see the arc that you're talking about, Octave, with him. Whereas, Stephen Lang is an exposition machine.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as scientifically sound as the space dementia in Armageddon.
Oh God,
he's got space dementia.
That differs from regular dementia.
That's my favorite part in Armageddon. That shot where William Fichtner's like, he's got space dementia.
It's so terrible. It's so terrible. I think it's interesting because again, to bring up this last film cast thing, and I gotta bring it up because people were also talking about it when Avatar came out, is there was a lot of comparisons to Star Wars, like it being this generation Star Wars, in the way that it had done things that it had done things we had never seen before. It pushed technological cinema. But I wanted to keep that in mind while I was watching Avatar this time. Like, I wanted to keep it in mind if I was sitting in 1977 watching Star Wars and knowing nothing about it prior, like, the sequels hadn't happened, where you're just sitting there and it's as a movie. And being blown away. Like, I can imagine being blown away, like, and being an adult too. I think that's also crucial, because I was thinking in terms of Star Wars versus Avatar, and I was thinking, like, we were all kids when we saw Star Wars. I mean, like, we were all like, and got into it, and also I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I think the original Star Wars is, if you take it just as a movie, it's got its hokey elements to it as well, and it's got its, like, painted black and white sides, not as much as Avatar, but painted black and white. And I think that Star Wars: A New Hope, anyway, is elevated by the next two movies. It's elevated because it's part of this trilogy. Clearly. And it's part of clearly. And so even though I can't deny that Avatar is overrated, especially when you reach that level of like box office success, like, how can you not, resist that urge to take something down a peg or two? But I don't think, especially watching this as adults, I don't think we're going to have the context of how well this movie fits into popular culture, how well it holds up, however that may be, until we get the future movies and the quality of the future movies, and how will that elevate this movie. Because, I mean, as it stands now, it's a perfectly fine movie that's painted in big, broad strokes, that's modeled after Pocahontas, but at the same time, it's Ferngully or
Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Smurfs, as South Park so brilliantly pointed out. But I feel like until we get those other movies, if 2 ends up being the Empire Strikes Back of the series and takes it into like murkier territory, it's hard to say, I guess, where this movie's going to fit in the pantheon of pop culture, because unlike this society, this big Hollywood machine of just churning sequels out the second the first one becomes popular, we're still waiting for the sequel, and I think that's pretty admirable in this day and age that somebody has the clout to be like, I'm not going to do it until I feel, I mean, he's doing it, but he's like, I'm not going to release it until I feel like it is the vision that I want. And I think that's great. And I guess we don't know. That's what I'm saying.
I think that's a great point, Ryan. You're right. I think maybe down the line, the 3 sequels are gonna create this kind of like pop culture phenomenon that's gonna elevate the original Avatar and make it look like there's more time passing between the sequels. It's not like A New Hope and Empire where it was just there's just 3 years in between the films, but at least I'm sure these movies are going to be huge. People have this like really weird short-term memory loss when it comes to Cameron.
Yeah.
Because every single time people and pundits and critics and film buffs and industry insiders or whatever, they're just like, oh, it's just like budget blown way out of proportion. He's going insane. This movie's going to tank. Like all these like doomsday predictions for Titanic, for example, becomes the biggest movie of all time. The same shit happens with Avatar. And then, at that time before Avatar came out, people were just like, oh, it looks, there's no footage and it's been taking so long and blah 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 blah. It was the same exact conversations, and even back then I was just like, you guys don't remember Titanic? Like, it's the same shit that's happening.
Yeah,
like,
and
this
in a way,
going to be huge, and they're doing it now. They're like, a lot of like people that I hear are just like, oh, he's pushing the sequels back, and like nobody cares about Avatar anymore. These movies are gonna tank. It's just like, you idiots, just stop doing this. Like, it's the same circle. Like, can you just like have a little bit more of a like long-term memory to look back and be like, this happened over and over again? So I'm just like, just stop saying the same stupid shit and understand that the Avatar sequels are probably going to be huge.
I like this. Because this is a much more nuanced opinion of Avatar that I wanted to put out there. Like, I like that Ryan and Okta, you guys are saying.
So maybe Avatar's journey isn't over. I think
it's not. Agree with Ryan there. I am for any argument that says time is, because it is always the ultimate, has the ultimate last say so, and we don't know yet, because, and I like the idea of saying it's only been 5-6 years for Avatar's existence. Like, why are we in such a hurry to classify it as, oh, it's not great anymore, it just was this flash in the pan? Like, I like this. That's the approach, even though I do think it is, I'll still argue it, as a personal overrated movie. There's far more, as we try to get at with this show, like there's all these different layers of that conversation to have, and here's where it is with Avatars. It's not, it is probably going to be huge. Don't count, you should never bet against Cameron, because it's a fool's errand, because people even got worried about T2 was over budgeted, like, and turned out to be huge. And the only time it didn't work out where a movie went over budget, he shot it on water, had problems, and he didn't really become a massive hit, was The Abyss. And it's just, I don't think that's going to happen again, because of other things we pointed out. Is he's changed as a scriptwriter, but as a filmmaker. And, it doesn't mean he's like, it's just what it comes down to is, what do we prefer from James Cameron, we've all laid out the types of movie of his that we like, and you just, rule number 1, don't bet against Cameron, because
apart from the pop culture resonance of the film, what do you think is overrated about Avatar, just the film itself? Yeah,
the film, like, for me, I saw it twice in theaters. I really enjoyed it when I saw it the first time. I left work early, saw it the first screening at an IMAX screen, a proper one in Minnesota, where they have a couple of those. Really enjoyed it. It did feel like an event, because I was sitting next to middle-aged dudes that left their business jobs, real jobs, to come there, and I'm just stoned, just out of college, like ready for a trippy 3D movie kind of guy. It was really.
Man, I wish I was stoned when I saw it in 3D.
Oh, it's a great stoner movie. And absolutely, it's a great weed movie, absolutely. But yeah, really enjoyed it. But saw it a second time, took some friends that time, and it just honestly, after I saw it the second time, I was like, I'm done with this movie. There's nothing left for it. Like, and that's the distinction I need to make. Is to me, it's just not a great movie. It's a fine for what it is. And I love that it was an event and he pushed the technology further. But as a movie, there's nothing else for me to take away from it, because I'd rather watch, as I said, The Abyss or Aliens, T2.
It's honestly mostly because the story is so predictable and
it's exactly. There's nothing, because it's a lack of nuance, and there's not really anything new that he's doing other than the visuals. Mm-hmm. Well, I got the visual. Like, the visuals are the most surface level thing, and there's more things for me to chew on with movies like The Abyss and even other, successful films than there is with Avatar. And that's my biggest thing, is there's just nothing much to take away from it beyond its very simple surface message. Mm-hmm. So repeat viewings, which is kind of my big arbiter of like what I consider great films for me personally, are do I want to watch them again and again? And I don't. I'm done with Avatar.
I think that's a great barometer to have, because I like that too. Like, the ones that I end up usually on my top 10s at the end of the year are some things that I want to watch again and again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm with you. This movie is very, very simplistic, but at the same time, this might be that case where it's like, it may not be designed to watch over and over again, and maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm with you. I feel the exact same.
Maybe it was just made to be an experience.
And some movies are, especially in this, like Gravity's that same way. I like that movie. I like that movie more than I like Avatar. But just like Avatar, it didn't hold up as well watching it at home.
That is a good point. Point.
And as much as I loved that movie in the theater, and it's the same thing with Avatar. It's like, maybe these movies were just designed for that big screen experience. And I think that's great if filmmakers, like great filmmakers like Cameron, like Alfonso Cuarón, are like getting people's asses in the seats and getting them into a movie theater. And if they only watch it that one time, that's okay. That's okay. You got them there. And they pulled something pretty magnificent out. And sure, a movie like Hugo, I love more than those, and will watch at home. Like, some of those hold up, some of those don't. But I think I still like the experience of watching Avatar is still like, I actually didn't finish watching all of it this time around. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that might be making your case more of why it's an overrated. But at the same time, I'm like, I just want that memory of watching it the 2 times I saw it in the theater. I want that. I don't want to taint it, I guess, because I don't know. I again, with my assessment of, we don't know where this movie is going to fall years down the road. Will I want to rewatch it? But like, as a standalone movie, I think it's a great visual feat. But you're right, there is not a whole lot to chew on.
Well, it's a nice kind of maybe busy day, like home video weaving, because you know the beats of the story, and they're so predictable, and the way they're executed is so like kind of everything's on the surface level that you can just like watch it in the background and just look at the pretty pictures every once in a while, and I think it would still make like for a really fun kind of movie watching at home experience.
Right, and you already kind of made this point, Octave, but I definitely think you're right in that this movie maybe almost had to be so simplistic to even get made on the scale that it did and the budget that it did, because I mean, you shouldn't bet against James Cameron, and I feel like even the studios need to remember that. It's like, hey, don't bet against this guy. He's going to make you a shitload of money. 20th Century Fox or whoever, he's going to be doing
the amount of attention that he had to put to basically creating a brand new technology.
A brand new technology and a movie on this scale and this budget, hugely budgeted, that's not based on anything. Like, you can say that it's Pocahontas and all that, Virgo, all you want, and the parallels are there, but it's not based on anything previously published. So,
and you could say the same thing about A New Hope, the original Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
It is very similar in that sense.
Yeah, and it's one thing I could say that is like, if he didn't have enough time to, I mean, I guess that goes into his like kind of notorious ego as well, but if he didn't have kind of like, if he was like, I need to focus on this technology and spend years developing it and developing this movie, maybe he should have hired a screenwriter. But
he did for the sequels, though. Apparently, he's got
so maybe
somebody who's writing with them.
Maybe he's listening to all these criticisms of how kind of flat the script was, and doing something to remedy it, because he wrote pretty much like everything that he's ever. So for him to hire screenwriters and kind of go in that different direction, maybe the sequels are going to be like the Empire Strikes Back of this whole saga. Like they're going to be like, oh, you're going to watch it and you'll be like, wow, this is so much better.
That would be great. And Eric already touched on that point. He's never been that nuanced, but he really isn't nuanced here. He's always been able to for example, if you take the Pandora scene that you're talking about, Stephen Lang gives that exposition about Pandora, and you compare it with the chase scene in the first Terminator, when Kyle Reese is giving Sarah Connor everything about why he's back in time, why he came back in time, why he's after her, why he's got to protect her, and even though it's really expository and it's really on the nose, it happens during a car chase. It's an intense moment that you almost have to get that information out in a concise, clear, easy to follow way, and compare that with this movie where it's it can be maybe a little bit more nuanced, or it doesn't have to be that obvious.
It can be more organic, It's
exactly.
not in Avatar. It's not organic to the sequence. It's just Stephen Lang literally talking to a group of people, and it's that's really visually boring for a rather visually dynamic movie, it's you can do better than that, and he has done better than that, as you've explained right there with that Terminator example.
It's like the mustache twirling evil guy against, he's drinking coffee while he's attacking the, can you not make it so just ham-fisted and obvious? It becomes kind of a self-parody after a while. He's have you guys seen MacGruber?
Yes.
Like Kunth in MacGruber, that kind of parody bad guy who's just so evil that you're so cartoonish. But in that movie, of course, it's supposed to be a parody. But in this one, it's it's so just off-putting, and it's the performance of the guy just really, to me, is what kind of makes it tolerable and saves it a little bit. But that's the that's the thing.
Otherwise, though, I think the performances between the two movies specifically, and Avatar versus other Cameron films in general, the performances are just by and large really not up to snuff in Avatar.
Especially Sam Worthington, man.
Oh, yeah. Sam Worthington, he's whatever. He's sort of a blank hero. That's kind of what the role needs. He's not very good, but Sigourney Weaver is really comes off not comfortable in the green screen. I don't know what it was, but I love Sigourney Weaver, and she doesn't come off very well.
I think it's mostly because some actors just they have trouble adjusting to this all green screen all the time. If you watch, I think that was an issue with him as well. But if you watch the difference between the performances of Ian McKellen's performance in Lord of the Rings as opposed to the Hobbit trilogy, there's a huge difference in energy and commitment. And he's just kind of sleepwalking through it, and the Hobbit, he just kind of looks confused, and which then, I guess that was the case.
Yeah. And then, ultimately, just more specifically with The Abyss, the whole cast, everybody in The Abyss, I think, is great. Just really, really strong. So,
and they roll into the shit, literally, into the water, and Ed Harris once almost drowned, and he had a nervous draft.
Yeah, there are sequences that really stick with you in The Abyss. And the other thing I guess I would knock on Avatar is there's no sequences that I'm there's cool moments, but nothing as I watched The Abyss today, I was just oh yeah, this is the part where the fucking crane comes down, and they're just talk about tension building as you're watching the rope pile up, and then it continues, and then there's the fight with Michael Biehn and Ed Harris, and then there's all these sequences and moments that I look
forward to.
Yeah, looked forward to. I just don't have that with Avatar, and I want it. I want to feel the greatness that a lot of people feel with the movie, but I just never have. But
especially since it energy-wise, it kind of keeps going down. It's just it becomes more and more stale as you watch it, because
and the highs are contrasted with really low lows in the movie. There's a couple sequences that I do look forward to in this movie. Really, only two. When he has to sort of train that dragon type creature and connect with that. I really like like that sequence a lot. And then like the last 40 minutes, like that sort of like set piece, I really, really like as well.
To me, the best sequence happens like very early on when he first finds himself in the body of the creature, and he's ecstatic, and he's like running around
because he can
so
walk
happy. Yeah, he's so happy that he has legs, and it's just like this. And that's the first time you see, like, you're just like looking around. Like, I remember when I first watched it on IMAX in 3D, and you just like keep looking at the background to see all these like details, and that's the first time you see like this whole world, and it just like expands in front of you, and that scene is still like kind of awe-inspiring. But then that's one of the problems with like when you kind of have the best scene in the movie like very early on, it becomes very hard to like kind of be motivated to watch the rest of it.
Yeah, it's true.
I hear that. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The Abyss, there's way more moments you're like, oh yeah, this is when this happens. But I mean, there's a couple in Avatar.
I mean, there's a lot of cheesy stuff in The Abyss. As I've said, it's like a hokey movie. But like and this might tap into the nostalgia I have for the movie because I saw it at a young age and loved it so much. But like I mentioned the crane sequence when it's falling. How about the like dialogue reading by the bald guy that's at the top of the ship that's connected to their like rig when he's like, the crane. Yeah. Like, that I've always, when you've seen a movie so much that you kind of nostalgic for the bad moments like that. Like that's like, wow, dude, that's the take that they took for that scene. I've always thought of it as like kind of a bad moment, but I love it for being in there. That every time it's coming up, I'm like, oh, this is the crane moment, and he's just I love that shit.
I wonder if Toy Story got that from this movie.
Oh yeah,
the
right.
Claw.
Yeah, right. And then there's another quick kind of cheesy moment that like in a lesser movie wouldn't work, but for me it's great. Is the military guy that does swing onto the good guy's side in The Abyss, the character that helps balance out the sort of character that's sorely lacking in something like Avatar, but fucking. Ed Harris is trying to sneak up on Michael Biehn. It's another very tense moment, and he messes up, and Michael Biehn pulls a gun on him, and he pulls the trigger, and then the no bullet comes out, and then it cuts to that guy as he like, for no reason other than to be dramatic, he like spits the bullets out of the clip that he had taken out, and he like closes his eyes like, yes, I did that, and it's so hokey. It's such a like actor movie moment, like, hey man, you're really dramatic right now, but it fucking works because you're like, yeah, that guy did that. It's one of those for me, like
it's like the fist pump moment.
It is, and then it's followed by, as I alluded to or mentioned earlier, one of the great slow-mo punches in, like, honestly, no bullshit, movie history. Like, I'll be that hyperbolic. It's so great the way
that scene is great.
It's amazing, and so cheesy stuff. Even that stuff works for me.
But that's part of like some of our favorite movies. Like I feel like we look forward to like the endearing kind of cheesy moments that we know are coming. It's just like, and that's kind of like part of the fun.
It is
that like
this is that for me for sure.
It's a little goofy and it doesn't like. It's but you're kind of like, I still love it. Whatever. The crane. It's on its way down to you. That's what the guy does. So
that's awesome.
And it's also as far as the home video releases, it couldn't be more night and day between the two movies we're talking about, because the 3 Blu-ray edition of Avatar is incredible. Like the transfer, just like the straight digital transfer. And it's that's the disc that I usually use to like showcase the projector system to people, and I use it as like a demo disc. So it's kind of interesting that these two films like might have the best versus the worst like home video.
I know, it's so sad.
Availability.
Yeah, come on, Cameron. We know you're listening. We know you're an over-under fan.
Yeah, he sure is listening.
Make it happen, man. Take away from this podcast. Give us our Abyss Blu-ray and True Lies while you're at it.
If he is listening, how was sex with Linda Hamilton like? That would be the one thing I would want to know, of course.
That's it's speaking of cheesy moments, as cheesy as the movie is, I love True Lies also. Yes. Like that's a nostalgic movie for me, for sure.
The tone of that is supposed to be cheesy and goofy.
Oh, I know, but I love it. It's very funny. Like
even Tom Arnold is funny in that movie.
Which is very rare sight.
I know.
James Cameron is so good, he made Tom Arnold funny.
Well, and fucking Clooney's producing partner, Grant Heslov, is the guy in the van. Like
He's a part of his team or whatever. Yeah, he's the cameraman at the end. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great.
That's very cool.
Yeah, those three, man. The Abyss, both theatrical and special editions, True Lies, and Strange Days, like, we sorely need
Agreed.
Blu-ray releases. By the time they happen, it'll probably be like the 4K Blu-ray or whatever the fuck, but,
Yeah, the Ultra HD. Well, hey, we can start a Kickstarter page if all else fails to get the thing going.
Just be like, just do a White House petition.
Exactly. Well,
Obama will be like, what is Strange Days?
It sounds like we're spinning off a little bit, so it might be a good time to wrap this up. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Think so.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for listening to the episode. Yeah, wrap it up.
Just watch that Chappelle Show episode.
It's so great.
Yeah,
well, signing off is Ryan Oliver, host of the podcast Unspooled Reel and author of the blog Wellness in 24 Frames.
Hey, this is Octavia Kozak. I'm a film critic for BayasParada.com, the Oregon Herald, DVD Talk, and The Playlist.
And I'm Eric McClanahan, signing off, film critic for The Playlist, Oregon Arts Watch. My other film podcast is Adjust Your Tracking. And I have one more thing to say, and it's my most favorite line from The Abyss. Keep your pantyhose on.
Oh, that's so brilliant. I should end it there, but we have plugs, unfortunately. So,
plug away.
As always, you can follow us on Twitter at OverUnderMovies. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/OverUnderMovies. Leave us a comment if you have over-under movies or movies that you think are overrated and underrated. Open discussion up. Who knows? Maybe we'll want to pick one of them.
Yeah, you don't know.
And yeah, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, leave a comment or rating. It always helps know what we are doing right and what we can improve on. But as always, thank you for listening, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with another set of picks. So thanks for listening.
For Brian.
Yeah, for me. So prepare.
Yeah.
Bye.